Okay, so welcome to the next Strimzi Community Meeting. The agenda and the attendee list should be what you see on the screen, and you have the link in the chat. And I think the first point we have on the agenda is open forum questions and issues. Does anyone have anything they want to discuss or open? Okay, that doesn't sound like it. So in that case, the next section is about the PR and issues. I think there's, oh great, I opened it again from the wrong browser. So one of the things which are stale for some time, one of them is this custom matcher for the assembly operator state. Sam, do you know if there was any progress from the user?
So he messaged me privately and said that he'd get back on it. He's just been very busy with work deadlines and stuff. He sounded like he's going to get back to it. I'd recommend that we push it back maybe another 2 weeks to a month.
Yeah, okay.
And then reevaluate.
That's fine. If he came back to you and said that he will get to it, then we should just leave it open. And then the next one, which seemed quite a long time dead, is this thing about the cruise control stuff. Tom, any idea if you might get back to it or what to do with it?
I'd like to think so. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's a bit silent, but
I've been messing around with my Pulse audio settings again, so everything's gone to pot. Yeah, so I was hoping to get back on this, but some other things have come up. There are some changes that have been suggested, I think by your good self, Jakob, or it might have been Tom Bentley. Oh, that was it, yes, because we decided against using a config map for delivering all this stuff. And then we decided, well, we chatted about maybe adding a config map because it'd be neater than a massive status update. And I thought I'll have a think about that. And then that was a while ago. So need to decide whether we want to introduce a config map to surface this information, because it is quite detailed and could get more detailed. And the more brokers you have, the more detailed it will get, and the longer it will get. So it probably will start to fill up a status field very quickly. So maybe a config map is better, but it's another thing for the operator to create, update, and delete, but maybe that's not a problem. So just have to make a decision on that, and then I can implement it.
Okay, so I guess we can leave it for the time being and hope that you will find some time for it.
Yeah, I'd like to find some time for it in the next week or two.
Okay, that was the 2 PRs which I found. Does anyone want to discuss any other PRs? Okay, sounds like no. And then I think from last time we had one proposal that's about the security. But I think last time we said that we will wait for some update for that, and I think that didn't happen. So I don't think there's much to discuss about this proposal today, or?
Hi, Jakob. Yes, just really sorry about that. We've been quite busy, so we've not had a chance to get back around to it, but we've not forgotten about it. We will be updating it as soon as we can.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Anyone wants to discuss some other proposals? Okay, then that will be quick if we go this way. So the next point I added to the agenda was the progress on the annual review, but I think there wasn't anything on the mailing list nor on the GitHub issue. So I guess that's now waiting for being scheduled for some TOC meeting or something like that.
Jacopo, can you add the link to the annual review PR to the agenda?
Because I don't have it here around.
Okay. let me try to find it.
But I didn't got any notification about any comments or anything on the PR.
Oh yeah, just for having track on the document.
I added it.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing there really, just the label.
Which is the first step.
Yeah, I think they will schedule it for some TOC meeting or something like that. And, yeah. Okay, and then the next point I added was the 0.20 release. And to discuss what do we want or don't want to do for that. So just before this meeting, Lukáš came that I broke the upgrade with the listener change, which is of course something we all forgot, and which will be terribly hard to fix. So I guess I would need to find some time for that. I also wanted to add there the warnings and deprecation in the status, which I worked on yesterday a bit. If we don't, originally we wanted in the 0.20 remove the V1 Alpha 1 versions of the old resources, but I think there's not much time for that, but it might be handy to first get the deprecation nodes into the status before we remove it in 0.21. So I thought that might be quite a nice feature. And then I guess if the Fabric 8 upgrade starts working, that might be nice as well. And then another good things which I thought would be interesting were the topic operator Kafka-based store. Although I wonder if that's a bit too risky as a last-minute change. And then we should probably do a new bridge release and use the new bridge in the operator as well, since there are these headers change and something else I think as well, Paolo.
Yeah, the problem with the bridge is that there is one PR from Maros. It seems that Lukáš is digging into it because Maros maybe is busy or I don't know, off. And we need that one to be merged because there are some tests failing, it seems. And after that, Lukáš was working on a course problem. We have to decide if we want to fix that for the coming bridge release or waiting. It depends on timing, but for sure we have to merge, or well, to fix and merge this PR about some tests failing, but we have to wait for Maros for that.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we need to keep it in mind to finish that, because we need to finish that before we do the operators RCs. So yeah, if we need week for the bridge release, then that's another week before we can do the operators release. So I think we need to push the bridge work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else anyone else thinks we should have for the 0.20 release? Okay, so I guess that brings us to the end of the agenda. Did anyone came up with something to discuss in the meantime? If not, then was someone going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the topic operator metadata store, what state that was in. I know that Alesh has been working on it, but I haven't seen any kind of updates on that very recently.
So yeah, Alesh has been working on it, and I've reviewed it a couple of times. Last time I looked at it, there still wasn't the sort of the migration part that we'd need in order to be able to migrate people from the one store to the other. And obviously, in order for that to sort of work via the cluster operator, we'd need for that to sort of be automatic, or rather than it being sort of a separate tool, which works fine for sort of the standalone use case, but doesn't really work very well for the operator use case. So I know he's been working on it the past few days, but he's not pinged me for another review. So I suspect that while that is getting quite close, it's probably not ready just yet. So my feeling is it's probably better if we don't try and squeeze that into 0.20 and try to get it merged as soon as we've done the branch for 0.20, so that QE guys will be able to test it thoroughly before we do 0.21.
Yeah, so I asked him today about how does it look with the PR, or I asked him actually yesterday, but he answered today that he thinks it should be more or less ready. But then he had to run away when I asked about the conversion. But Tom, so maybe you will be able to answer that. What's the reason why the operator doesn't do its own conversion at startup?
Because last I looked, Alesh hadn't written that. So it might
Right,
be that he's written that in the past few days.
So you mentioned the cluster operator doing that, or
no, it's just so that
tool?
It's just so that in an operator environment, when you spin up the deployment, that it does the upgrade automatically, basically.
Right. So basically, it would be part of the operator code itself.
Yes.
Of the topic operator code.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So some of what you said kind of made me think that it might be a separate tool, which scared me a bit. But yeah, okay. So I wanted to make sure about that. Okay. So yeah, let's add a node.
Are we expecting to get anything particular out of the Fabricate upgrade, or just a newer, more shiny thing that might have some more bugs fixed?
Yeah, it's probably more or less that new shiny thing with some bug fixes.
Okay.
Even if Stanislav pinged me with a problem with the new version of Fabricate around service account, so it seemed that he was having some problem with everything working with the old one and not working with the new one. But I don't know after our chat if we had some progress on that.
When was that?
Sorry?
When was that?
It was yesterday, I guess. Yeah.
I think most of the tests passed in the regression suite on Azure.
So maybe meanwhile I found the reason why it was failing.
That seems a bit strange, because if there would be service account issue, then I would expect all of the tests to fail, basically.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, if that's not ready, I don't think we really need it, but yeah, if it would be there, it would be there. Guess we can easily skip it if it's not ready in time. Okay, anything else to discuss? Any other business? Any questions? If not, then I guess we can call it a short meeting. Or we can, in theory, try to do some bug triage of some of the issues we have on GitHub, which will be a lot of fun, but I guess it wouldn't hurt.
I don't mind doing some bug triage if that'd be useful.
Yeah, I'm fine with doing that.
So where do we start with it? Do we start from the oldest issues or from the newest issues?
Oldest.
Yeah, oldest sounds good to me.
So I guess this is the oldest one. Kafka Connect Sidecar container. So at that time, the idea was that we could support standalone Kafka Connect, which would, for example, run as a sidecar inside of some other pod and can be used, for example, as a kind of file sync, file source adapter for integrating some applications or something like that.
So while the use case is valid, in the sort of the intervening, 3 years, no one's really sort of called out for it. So I'd be inclined just to close this.
I think there were some discussions, but I don't think it really fits the operator model, right? So you might, for example, have some webhook which would inject it into some pods or something like that. But it's not really something you do with the CRD in the operator pattern, right? So I guess closing it might make sense. Anyone disagrees? So I guess hearing nothing, that means that everyone agrees that it should be rejected. Okay, another one, expose Zookeeper to outside world. So I suggest to close this one. We know that Zookeeper is going on and that we don't want to continue.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
With that, right?
1000%.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Expose Kafka Connect to the outside world.
So what's the use case for this?
Well, that is something people are asking from time to time, that they want to have, I don't know, load balancer or something to access the REST API from Connect.
And are we officially supporting contacting the REST API, or do we want only the operator to basically manage that? Because if you're using connectors, don't you have a sort of conflict of interest there?
So I think I was always kind of a proponent of saying that you have to use the connector operator and you don't get any access to the API.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was never really accepted in general, and there are always arguments against it. And I think some of the proposals we accepted from Andrew were talking about kind of more exposing it in a secure way and so on. So I guess currently the plan is that we will support both as alternative, that you can decide whether you want to use the REST API or whether you want to use the connector operator. And then there's the other thing, whether you should be able to kind of, for example, say I want the REST API to be behind load balancer or ingress or something, so that you can connect to it from outside and not just exec into some pod or something like that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with doing this and having the people be able to choose between connectors or using the REST API directly. My only thing would be that the security has to be a prerequisite for doing this, because yeah, it'd be madness otherwise.
So something like this.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Okay, next one. Make it configurable as priority in resolving conflicts in topic configurations. So I
think, go on, Jakob.
I just wanted to summarize that this is about the topic operator when you have a conflict because something changed both in the topic CR and in Kafka. Then that's about who gets the priority.
Yeah, so I think this still makes sense. In practice, we have not heard a load of people saying that what they really want is to be able to define which side has got priority when there's conflict, because in practice there don't seem to be conflicts very often, which makes sense given how the topic operator works. So I think this does make sense, but I think there's a whole bunch of features which people have asked for, which would make a lot more sense to do first. So I don't mind keeping it open, but it's not exactly a priority.
Okay, next one. Check Kafka topic in sync replicas during scale down.
So this is interesting, isn't it, this one? Because it actually touches on some slightly bigger points. So one immediate sort of thing is, at the moment we allow you to scale down without having forced you to reassign the replicas on that topic to other nodes, which would be kind of a good safety feature to add. But I know that we briefly sort of talked the other day about the fact that when you scale down, you can only take out the highest numbered pods in the stateful set, and that is not always desirable, because it might be that you care less about the data on node 2 than you do about the data on node 5, and so really you'd really rather get rid of node 2, but in order to do that, you'd end up having to move a whole load of data around in order that those partitions that are currently on node 2, well, node 5, yeah, you basically have to sort of shuffle everything around, which is horribly slow and yucky, and we can't change that unless we decide that actually stateful sets aren't a good fit for what we're trying to do, which would be a massive piece of work. So I'm getting a little bit off topic here. I think having the precondition that you can't scale down a node that's still got replicas on makes sense, which is probably a different issue. I should stop talking.
Cruise control will let us do some of this automatically, but again, yeah, you don't get around the fact that it's going to take ages to move the data.
I think the issue is a bit confusing because it's kind of ignoring the fact that right now you have to move the topic manually before you do the scale down, or you lose everything. But so I don't know whether we have better issue for kind of not scaling down if you have data on the brokers. If not, then this is probably as good as any other to use for that, right? Because that's something we should have. So should we keep it for that purpose?
Yeah, well, I mean, we should keep the issue open because at some point we're going to have to deal with scale down, and cruise control can do some of it. I think cruise control can decommission brokers for you and figure out where to put stuff to balance the load and all the rest of it. So, but we have to have much tighter integration between it and the cluster operator then.
Okay. Another one is the unidirectional mode for the topic operator. I think that's something what has a bit more demand from the users.
Yeah, I have heard people ask for things like this. So I think this one would be higher up the priority list of the topic operator. Possibly in sort of combination with some kind of way of selecting certain topics to have unidirectional behavior in one direction or the other, you know, via a regular expression or some such.
Why doesn't this have some priority field?
I think you have to set up priority labels if you want to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, which kind of sucks, right? So what about this one? We didn't need it to scale it for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. Plus now we will be soon changing from Zookeeper watches to something else when Zookeeper is removed, right?
Yeah, so I think this is still a valid point. You know, we don't know who's using the topic operator at scale and if they have problems or if people have just tried to use it at scale and given up and not bothered telling us. So I know that there are ambitions in Kafka to be able to scale up to very large numbers of topics and partitions. And at the moment, the way the topic operator works is it basically has to sort of do a full reconciliation. And while on the Kubernetes side, there are ways of doing sort of page lists and so on, on the way the topic operator works at the moment, the reconciliation doesn't really sort of do that. It kind of does everything at once. So I suspect there is a scalability problem there in terms of memory usage that we would want to look at some point. But what the sort of the current bound on that, practical bound on that is not clear at the moment.
Right, but so do we need to change it or update it somehow? Because so this talks specifically about Zookeeper watches, right?
Right. So if
that's something what will be gone soon and replaced with something else.
Yeah.
So should we change this to more general topic operator scalability issue, or?
Well, if this is talking about Zookeeper, then let's keep this about Zookeeper, and let's say that we'll close this. And since we don't have any evidence of people having problems with scaling the topic operator at the moment, I propose we don't yet open an issue just for a sort of hypothetical scalability problem that we don't actually know is a problem in practice.
Okay. Support for match expression for persistent volumes. Okay, that's probably something we still want, and it looks some started to work on it at some point, but then stopped it. So I guess we want to keep this. Or
Does that make sense to me?
okay, next one. So, fire Kubernetes OpenShift events on forbidden storage update. So I think from the time when we opened this, we largely moved from events to use the status of the custom resource. Is using Kubernetes events for things like warnings and deprecated things and so on still something we want to do, or are the conditions in the status sufficient, and should we close this?
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier when I was reviewing your PR, and you know, we have sort of concentrated on using the status, and you know, there's quite a lot of status information in the resources now. I don't know what other operators do. You know, it's only really kubectl describe where you might expect to see this sort of thing. Otherwise, I think stuff being in events can be maybe not so obvious to users as to what, you know, where to look for it. So I think I'd be happy to say this should be in status unless we can point to other projects which are using, you know, if there's a consensus within the Kubernetes community to use events for this sort of thing, then that would be different. But I'm not aware of anything like that. Are you?
So I don't really know what other operators are doing, but if you look at how the Kubernetes controllers behave, it seems to me like they usually use the events for something what's expected to be more temporary and more system thing, like can't mount a volume or config map, and not necessarily for warnings like you are using this annotation which will be removed in next version or something like that. So for example, in context of my PR, I don't think that makes that much sense. And it doesn't seem to make that much sense with the storage either anymore. So I think the context when we opened that, we for sure didn't have any status and we didn't have any custom resources. So I don't think at that point we necessarily thought that events are better than custom resource status. I think it was more the way which at that time seemed more logical when we didn't have it. But I don't necessarily think the storage use case makes sense now.
So
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree because. Go ahead, Tom.
So if we're not going to use events, is it worth changing it to say that we should use status so that we get this information to users one way or another?
I think we use status for this.
Already?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's close it.
Yeah, even because as Jakub said, at that time there was no status, and we were just logging into the cluster operator log, and there was no visibility for the user other than checking the log. While it seems today that checking the status is something that is used by users.
So like this?
Yep.
Okay. Right, so I guess this is about handling replication factor changes in topic operator.
Yeah, and I think the direction of travel here is to use cruise control. So it's around sort of prioritizing that. The obvious way to do it would be have the topic operator talk to cruise control to figure out what needs to be done, and probably have cruise control do the movement as well, and just have the topic operator orchestrate that with cruise control. Tom C, any thoughts?
No, I think that's, yeah, it's along the same lines as what we were talking about before. I want to use cruise control to do this because it can handle all the reassignment.
So PR on Monday?
yeah. After the other one I said I was going to do. Oh, that was it. Yes, the before and after. I think this is where we want to get to eventually, though. So, yeah. Did I open another issue about this? Oh, there, yeah. Maybe I did.
I'm pretty sure there might be another one floating around.
If there is another one and you run into it, then we can close the old one or the new one. Or so fixing way to pass operations into Kafka cluster operations. I guess that's Kafka assembly operator now.
So yeah, I went through this a while back, and I noticed that the problem isn't in that class anymore, but it's been moved to the resource operator supplier. I don't know if that's okay. I think it's fine. It might be better to initialize each individual operations object via setters for the purposes of mocking, perhaps, but it's unclear to me whether the resource operator supplier as is actually the best design it could be. But I don't know any better alternatives, really.
I think with Tom Bentley, we at some point consider using some dependency injection or something like that for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of the logical next step if we're so fed up of using sort of constructor stuff to do this. I'm not a great fan of using setters and so forth.
Yeah.
Just because it makes it easy to forget to call a setter or whatever, and so something ends up null that shouldn't be. But no one's sort of stepped forward to take the bull by the horns and try to add any sort of dependency injection stuff. And at the moment, yeah, it's kind of painful, but the pain is never that massive. So yeah, we've kind of like lived with it as it currently is.
Yeah, I think the problem we had with the dependency injections is that when we were actually considering, we didn't really found something what we liked, what wasn't, like pulling half of the Maven repository just for that and so on. I'm not sure I would close this. I think this is a bit annoying when I think the resource operator supplier works fairly fine, but it's still across many, many places. And when you, for example, add handling of some new resource, then there's many different places where you need to change the constructor of it, just to sometimes add some null, sometimes add some mock. So it's fairly simple change, often turns up into going through many different, mainly test files. So I'm not sure I would close it. I still think using something better might make sense, but I don't think that's probably a priority, really. Or
Yeah, I would agree.
okay. Refactoring future composition in the composite operations. Is this still something valid? Apparently it was in November 2018 when I last asked this question.
I can't imagine that we've changed all that much since then. I think we can close this. I think there might be an issue here, but I'm not sure it's exactly the issue described here anymore. think with a lot of this stuff, if we were going to change it where possible, I'd want to change it so that we tended to use Kubernetes watches rather than the sort of stuff that we do at the moment with polling for completion of things. But yeah, that's sort of a separate issue.
Okay. Document labels. Do you think this is still valid, Tom?
I don't know, I'd have to look at the documentation. I think it is documented somewhere now. If I was going to sort of say that there was an issue around documentation of this sort of thing, I'd say actually annotations are now, it's kind of like we need a reference in the documentation to say these are the annotations that you can apply to these different things and what they mean and the sort of the semantics of it. And they kind of, they might be mentioned in the documentation, but there's nowhere sort of, yeah, like a reference where they're collected together. But I'm not aware that this is badly documented now. Carry on and look at some other issue, and I'll just do a quick look at the documentation. We can come back to this.
Okay. Unified documentation for Kubernetes, OpenShift, document templates separately. I guess this is something what's long gone. The OpenShift documentation is gone basically.
Yep.
It's now Kubernetes only, so we can close this, or?
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Admin client failures, but topic created. So I guess the question which I always wanted to ask, Paolo, have you seen this recently? Since March 2018? Oh, did we lose Paolo?
There's Paul here. I've just been having a look at the documentation regarding annotations. So we've got a section for discovering services using labels and annotations. And we, in the appendix, in the schema reference, we talk about annotations for listeners. I don't know whether we want to bring everything together. Is that something that we should look into, Tom?
Hang on, I'm just looking at it myself. Just give me a moment. A lot of these things are not easy to... Yeah, you know, I think the annotations are documented in the sort of the relevant places for, you know, procedures where they might be used. So I guess it's not really a problem. It's just if someone, you know, asked me to, you know, list the different annotations that you could use on a Kafka resource, for example, I could name a couple, but I wouldn't be sure that I had the complete list, and the, you know, I'd have to go away and ferret around in the source code to figure out which ones could be applied to what, for example. So it's not like they're not documented. It's just there's no, like I said, there's no sort of reference that says, yes, these are the annotations that you can use on this particular CR. And this one does this and that one does that. I don't know whether we really need that level of documentation though. Normally people come at it from the direction of wanting to do some particular thing, and we've got that sort of documentation. So I guess I'm saying I think we can close this.
Okay, Paul ran away, but this issue is basically around all kind of admin client issues in the topic operator, around no route to host and so on. I don't think I saw any DNS issues for some time in the topic operator. So did we solve it with some of the changes we did around the DNS caching?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of anyone having complained about this recently. No one sort of commented on the issue to say, I've seen this or anything. So I think we just close it and say, can't reproduce.
Okay. Last 4 minutes. Topic controller should set client ID in its admin client config, so Kafka logging has a bit more contextual info for connections from the TC. Still valid, Tom?
Yeah, I think that probably is still valid. I'm not aware that it's being set. Let me have a quick look at the source code.
And I would guess that this could be something fairly easy to implement, or?
It would be trivial, yeah.
So where's this good start thing? Okay. Was it this one which we just did? Yeah. So what about this one? I don't think this was solved in any way, but I don't think anyone showed any interest in this. So
Can you just go up to the description? I missed it. Yeah, so I suspect Kafka configs can do the right thing now, and also the admin client. So I think this is still doable, or rather doable now than maybe it was then.
So that means that we can close it?
No, I think the need for it still exists. It's a shame. I don't know exactly where in the system tests Serhi was wanting to make these assertions. I guess it must be in one of the ones where we configure brokers somehow or whatever. Maybe one of the QE people could figure out which test would benefit from these assertions, but I'm pretty sure it should be doable now. The admin client in Kafka is, when you describe configs, you can get a lot of information these days.
So this was asking for a way how to get the configuration. So if the admin client has this, then this is pretty much done.
Well, we need to use it in the assertions in the system tests so that we can assert that a particular the broker has a particular configuration.
Okay, should we ping other Jakub if this is still valid?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I guess we are out of time. So let's stop the recording. Thanks for coming, everyone. And next meeting should be in 2 weeks again.